This is episode 11. In the previous episode, we had covered verses 1 to 10 of chapter 2. That was the first part of chapter 2, wherein Arjuna is pleading to God to show him the right path. Today, we will delve into the second part of chapter 2, wherein God talks about the eternal soul from verses 2.11 to 2.30. All these 20 verses are very important as they talk about the eternal soul. However, we will cover 6 out of these 20 verses today, as it is not possible to cover all of them at once. So we will cover verses 2.11 to 2.16 today. I will start off with literal translations first, and then we will talk about some interesting things. Starting off with verse 2.11, which is Shri Bhagwan Uvaj Ashocyan Anvashochah Tvam Pragyavadanascha Bhashase Gatasun Agatasunascha Na Anushochanti Pandita. God says, O Arjun, while using words that sound like wisdom, you are mourning for those that are not worthy of grief. The wise lament neither for those who have gone or those who have not yet gone, neither for the living nor for the dead. So that was verse 11. And then verse 12 is Na tu evam aham jatu na asam na tvam na ime janadhipa na cha ev na bhavishyama sarve vayamtah param. God says, never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all of these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. All of us always exist. This is one of the most important verses of the Gita. In 2.2, God basically says, it is never that I have not been there, nor you, nor these royal kings. And never will they ever cease to exist in the future, as each one of us always exists. So this is verse 2.12. And then verse 2.13 is, Dehino asmin yatha dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara tatha dehantar prapte dhirah tatra na muhyati. God says, just as the Dehina, which is the embodied soul, continuously passes from childhood to youth to old age, similarly, there is an attainment of the end of the body. The wise and patient are not deluded or troubled by this. Then verse 2.14 is Matra sparshah tu kaunteya sheet oshan sukh dukkha agam apayina anitya tan titikshasva bharata. God is saying, O Bharat, which is a name for Arjuna, the contact between the senses and the sense objects, such as hot and cold, give rise to fleeting perceptions of happiness and distress. This experience is due to the contact of sense objects with matter, and these are non-permanent. These come and go, like the winter and summer seasons. Just learn to tolerate or bear them with patience. Then verse 2.15 is Yam hi na vethanti ete purusham purusharshab sam dukh sukham dhiram sah amrit tattvaye kalpate. God is saying, O Arjun, noblest among men, and that is a reference to Arjun, the person who is not affected by happiness and distress and remains steady in both becomes eligible for liberation, and only he is fit for immortality. So that was verse 2.15, and verse 2.16 goes like this. Na asato vidyate bhavo, na abhava vidyate satah, ubhyo api drishtitah antah tu anyo tattva darshibhi. This is also one of the most important verses of the Gita, where God is saying, of the transient or unreal, there is no endurance or existence, and of the eternal, there is no cessation. So for the unreal, there is no existence, whereas for the real, there is no non-existence. This has verily been observed and concluded by the seers of truth after studying the nature of both. So these were the literal translation of these verses, and you can see that all of these verses are very important as they impart profound knowledge. Let's talk about verse 2.11, where God says, the wise lament neither for the living nor for the dead. Paramahansa Yoganand explains this verse with an analogy of ocean and its waves. He explains that waves are born on the top of the ocean and cease to exist once they hit the shore. But the sea is infinite. it doesn't have any beginning or end. Feeling sad for the wave when it hits the shore doesn't really mean anything, as it is a part of the ocean and eventually is immersed in it. A wave doesn't have any existence of its own, other than being a part of the ocean. So there is no need to mourn over the end of these waves. This is the analogy of Paramhans Yogananda. The analogy I used in the previous episode was of the water cycle. That is, the water drop falls from the sky to the earth and eventually merges into the ocean through a river, which means it ended where it was born. Similarly, your soul goes back to its place of origin because it's just Him. You never existed and never will. So there is no point in mourning over it. So this is verse 2.11. And I wanted to share the analogy of waves used by Paramhans Yogananda. Moving on to 2.13, it is an interesting verse because it can have different interpretations. And I will read it out again. Dehino asmin yatha dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara tatha dehantar prapti dhira tatrana muhyati. The first sentence is straightforward, which means just as the Dehina or embodied soul passes from childhood to youth to old age. The second line then says, similarly, there is an attainment of Dehantah or Dehantar. The wise and patient are not deluded or troubled by this. Now, there are multiple interpretations when it comes to the usage of the word Dehantah or Dehantar. Paramhans Yogananda uses the word Dehantar, which means transitioning to another body, while I use the word Dehantah, that is end of the body or when body perishes. I use this analogy because once a wave merges into the ocean, the chances of it becoming a wave again are higher, but you don't know for sure when it will happen. This is not an assembly line production, that upon leaving one body, you will automatically, immediately transition into another body. The stage of Dehantar could be reached immediately or it could take years. And it may not be you. Similarly, the broken wave of the ocean can become a new wave immediately or after a few years. But it is not the same wave that was reborn. Hence, I find Dehantah more appropriate because I don't believe in the assembly line production logic. And also because I find the ideology of landing in heaven or hell based on our deeds actually a caricature. One more reason behind my using the word Dehantah is if you look at human population on the earth, around the year 1300, this was about 35 to 40 crores. The population reached 100 crores in the year 1800, and today it is approximately 750 crores. Comparing today's number with 35 to 40 crores, does it mean that each soul from the year 1300 has been split into 20 pieces? That doesn't make any sense. Ocean is infinite. So it doesn't matter if it splits into 1 piece, 100 pieces or 750 pieces. I don't understand the concept of soul transitioning from one body to another upon death. And if one says that the number of humans has increased because many animals were converted to humans, the question is, what did these animals do to attain a human life? That justifies the increase in population from 35-40 crores to 750 crores today. So this logic doesn't work in my head. I don't read it as Dehantar ki prapti. The soul upon death merges into the infinite. It can be born again into another body or born again as a new wave. It can happen immediately or after many years, or it may never happen. So this is how I interpret and read Dehantah versus Dehantar. I will read verse 2.14, which says, Matra sparshah tu kaunteya shitoshan sukh duktah agam apaina anitya tan titikshasav bharata. So God is saying the contact between the senses and sense objects gives rise to fleeting perceptions of happiness and distress. This experience is due to this contact of sense objects with matter, and these are therefore non-permanent. They have a beginning and an end. Just bear them with patience. This is important because when we say that Dhritarashtra represents blind senses, there could be happiness due to the blind senses. but this happiness has a beginning and an end. This is different from the satisfaction or happiness which is eternal. Shashwat Shantim adhigacchati, as we said, is eternal. The happiness obtained by following the path of dhyan, karma or gyan is a different kind of happiness. It does not have a beginning and an end. Whereas happiness derived from blind senses has a beginning and an end. And this is the difference between the two. And I think that is what is being reiterated in verse 2.14. And then verse 2.16, in which God says, there is no existence of the unreal, and for the real, there can never be non-existence. There could be multiple interpretations here as well. One of which is that the soul or Dehana will never cease to exist, as it is a part of the eternal, of the infinity. And God is talking about the eternal nature of the soul in some ways. I will stop here. Today we covered verses 2.11 to 2.16. I would urge you to go through these verses carefully since they are very important verses. One more point, if you have any questions or clarifications, please send me a message at onerajkamal@gmail.com and I will try to respond. Thank you.